They lied to you about kindness being a weakness. Here's how it brought me riches. They told you kindness makes you weak. They were wrong. Let me show you how kindness became my secret weapon for bringing wealth and how it can transform your life too. Story 1, the landlord and the $1,200 miracle. Over 20 years ago, I worked as a home care therapist for a little girl in New York City. The building's buzzer was broken. And one day I vented to the person that I thought was the building super. He was always wearing what looked like to me clothes for painting, and he had the paint splattered all over his uniform. I said to him one day, we were both going into the building together. I said, this is ridiculous that I have to wait for somebody to come down and that somebody actually has to walk down the steps to let me into the building. And that day he let me in with the key. So to me, that just confirmed he was the building super or the maintenance man. Turns out he wasn't any maintenance guy. He was the building's owner. And he was the little girl's uncle. And he liked very much how I treated his sister, the mother of the little girl. He liked how I treated the little girl. And he liked the family's response to my visits. And a week later, a buzzer was installed, and I was able to press the buzzer and be buzzed into the building. And that was, what a simple pleasure, but it made me so happy. It made me so happy. Then he asked me to walk upstairs to the second floor apartment. In this building, there was a floor on every apartment. At the street level, there was a store with a 2-bedroom in the back. The second floor, which was a 4-bedroom apartment. There was the third floor, which was a 4-bedroom apartment. And there was the fourth floor, which was a 4-bedroom apartment. And the third floor had a vacancy. Now, this gentleman was very particular about who he let in the building because he had his sister on the top floor, on the fourth floor with her husband and children, and those are the people that I worked with. Then right up under that was the third floor. Nobody was living there. But I found out that his brother used to live in that building, but he had left 2 years ago. Then on the second floor was his other sister and her family living there. And then there were people that were renting the store. They repaired electronic equipment. And then I think they lived in the back, in the 2-bedroom in the back. So one day we're both going in the building together, this owner of the building and me. And he said to me, let me show you this apartment that I'm renovating. And I said to myself, whatever. I really wasn't interested in an apartment. I lived about 5 minutes away. I was very happy in my 1-bedroom apartment, the garden level apartment of a brownstone in a very lovely part of Brooklyn, New York. And he's asking me to look at this 4-bedroom apartment. I'm going, I am one person. What do I want with a 4-bedroom apartment? Even though where I was living was small, I wasn't ready to move. I was very comfortable there. It was a very beautiful building. The landlord was very kind to me, and it was just a very comfortable, cozy apartment. So he's showing me this 4-bedroom apartment, and I'm saying, why is he showing me this 4-bedroom apartment? And at the same time, I'm saying, what a beautiful 4-bedroom apartment. I'm saying, wow, this is so big. Guess about 1,000 square foot. And I was maybe in a, I don't know, 300 square foot apartment. I'm not sure, but it was lovely. It was just lovely. I remember feeling impressed when I saw paint. He was clearly renovating the apartment. And then he told me he's very careful about who comes in the building, and he wanted me to have the apartment. And I said, why does he want me to have the apartment? I said, this is nice. And so he goes, well, how much are you paying over there? Or how much can you afford to pay? And I just said what I was paying for the 1-bedroom 20 years ago. I was paying $1,200. And so I said to him, all I can afford is $1,200. He goes, you got it. And I said, he just really shifted me because that's not where my focus was in life, was moving. But it was very close. It allowed me to compartmentalize my life, meaning I used one room as a gym. I used one room as my computer room. I had just started doing public access television, doing some children's programming, and it was a great place to edit my videos. I had my first Apple computer. I was doing things, but I wasn't putting all the pieces together that this would be a good move for me to be able to have my life easily compartmentalized, my bedroom. It was just really nice in terms of making my life more organized. So I ended up taking the apartment. And the funny thing about it is this man was consistently nice. His family was consistently nice to me. It never changed, even though I lived in the building. And then when I started to think about buying a house, it took me a while to buy a house because I had bought houses before outside of New York, but I never bought a house in New York. The houses in New York were very expensive then, and they're even more expensive now. And so I wanted to be mindful that it fit my budget. Where I was living, the houses were out of my price range. And so I had to get my mind around that, even though he kept trying to sell me the building. Goodness gracious, was that a gold mine? I didn't know how to be a New York City landlord. It's a special skill set. And it was just way overwhelming to take this humongous building that was a gold mine, but I just wasn't in the space for it. I do remember this friend of mine, a male friend of mine, saying, and he spoke so quickly and repeatedly, if you can find a way to get this building, if you can find a way to buy the building, buy the building. He just said that over and over to me. If you find a way to buy that building and buy that building, find a way to buy that building and buy that building. And I go, I didn't have it in me. I didn't take the steps. I just felt overwhelmed. It was such a big building. It would have been my biggest purchase to date. And I just didn't feel, I let it go. So I stayed in the apartment while I took my time looking at other neighborhoods. And I ended up making friends with one of the real estate agents who happened to be looking to move. He was a very nice gentleman. So what I did is I rented him one of the rooms in my 4-bedroom apartment. And I go, well, this is a good deal. And then I did it again and I rented another room to somebody else. And so all of a sudden, I wasn't paying rent anymore. And the landlord liked me so much. He goes, I know you're going to bring in decent people into the building. As long as I get my $1,200 every month, I don't care. So that's what happened. He didn't care, and I stayed there until I eventually moved to the house that I bought, which took me some time. I remained friends with that real estate agent. He didn't end up being my final real estate agent. He was more of a newbie, and I really needed a seasoned real estate agent because I was very curious and I had a lot of questions and a lot of fears. I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of real estate agents. For me, I look at their intentions. If they're moving too quickly, wanting me to buy very quickly, I pull away, or they're showing me houses outside of my range, I pull away. I have lots of stories to tell about New York City real estate, but overall, if you could buy a building, buy a building. When it's time to sell them, you make a lot of money. And then if you're able to rent them out, doubly good. This is an example of how kindness wasn't a weakness. This landlord trusted my character and allowed me to live rent-free in a 4-bedroom apartment in one of the finest neighborhoods in New York City. Kindness was a magnet for wealth. Here's story number 2, the millionaire grandfather and the Lakehouse. Another one of my students, I was a home care therapist for a long time, and another one of my students had a grandfather who happened to be a multi-millionaire. And he noticed my dedication. This grandfather loved his son, and I was the teacher of his son. And he loved my dedication to his son. And one day he showed me photos of his lake house in Canada. And he told me, anytime you want to use it, just ask. So I could invite my friends and family and charge them. They pay for my airfare, they pay all the time. It would be a free vacation. And this is another example of how kindness created income that I didn't even chase. Kindness creates income and opportunities that I didn't even chase. And here's story number 3, the real estate agent who spilled the secrets. What a godsend he was. When buying my first house, my real estate agent, his name was Igor, he saw that I was curious. Actually, I was scared to death, so I asked a lot of questions. But I did want to buy a house. You don't have to like where you live or like New York City, but stay long enough or rent it out long enough so that you allow the house to be a wealth creator for yourself. I spent 12 years out of my life as a renter, and I just felt it was time for me to put the money into an investment for myself, and so I got into real estate. This wonderful real estate agent, Igor, saw that, I had a lot of questions, and he taught me landlord strategies. He took the time to to speak with me after showing me houses. He told me how to allow that house to make money for me. I remember he'd have his little pad, and we'd sit in his car, and he just right away, Carol this, Carol that, Carol do this, Carol do that. And I didn't know what he was talking about, but he kept repeating it. And every time we went to a house, he said, you see, you could do this here, do that. See what I told you? You could do this, that, and the third. And I was beginning to understand what he was telling me. He says, this is the way you do it. Don't do it any other way. And he kept saying that. And so I tell you, it took me a while to actually do it, even after I bought the house. Said, Igor said I got to do this. And I wasn't going to do that at first. And I was falling back on an old way. I was so terrified of falling back on the old way and losing the house that just one day I just put on my big girl pants and I said, I got to do what Igor told me. I got to do what Igor told me. And so I took a deep breath and I did it Igor's way. And I found so much success as a landlord. And I attracted the best tenants, really good tenants, that had no problem paying me my rent. There were three things I was always looking for: that they paid their rent on time, that they were easy to get along with, and they were respectful of the property. That's all I wanted. And I met tenant after tenant that gave me just that. And anytime I didn't follow my gut, I listened to somebody else, I got into trouble. But the trouble only lasted a second because I always had in my agreement, if you know, these are the rules of living here. If you don't, it's immediate. I was such a kind landlord that I would kick them out of the building. I said, where are you going next? Because you can't stay here. I would drive them to the next apartment. I would always have them pay a security deposit because that's what I would hold, so that if I needed to kick them out of the building, I would promise them their security deposit. These were mostly roommates situations. Their room and all the common areas where they had their stuff had to be cleaned out. And then I would give them in cash their security deposit, which was highly motivating. So I never had to deal with the court system, thank God. But this is all Igor. Igor taught me what to do. And he gave me the confidence to live in a building that costs a lot of money. For everybody on the block where I lived, they were all the first people to buy these homes. This was a neighborhood that had been, unfortunately, not seen as a safe neighborhood many, many years ago. So there was a whole project to come in and build new homes and bring in first-time home buyers, create people that are proud of where they live. And so I was not part of that. I came in 20 years later. So the first group of people paid a fraction of what I paid, $100,000, $200,000 for their homes. These were two-family homes. And then I came in 20 years later, and some of them may have taken out loans on their homes, or maybe they were just paying off their home outright. I was the first person to bring in visible renters from outside of the neighborhood onto this block. The landlords, the people that owned on the block, were very kind. And then I just kept bringing more kind people on the block. But because I followed Igor's strategies, he told me to do this, do this, do this. I didn't stray from that, and that's what brought me success. And I paid less, so the people living in the building paid the mortgage, and I did have to pay some, but what I paid was less than rent. Was less than I paid in rent to live in my own building. When it was time to sell, the house rewarded me by the equity. Igor taught me landlord strategies. He taught me how to attract respectful tenants. He taught me how to avoid missed payments and how to build trust. The result, 17 years of steady rent, while my neighbor battled in court or had no tenants because he didn't trust anybody. So kindness equals smoother cash flow. The science of kindness. Here's why this works. When you're kind, the brain releases oxytocin, which is a trust chemical. Oxytocin is a chemical released when we are in beneficial or benevolent relationships, which kindness is a facilitator of. The kindness frequency is the frequency of money. Money is the frequency of all things that make us feel good. So the neuroscience is that kindness releases oxytocin, your brain's trust chemical. It reduces stress, which means it reduces cortisol. And kindness sharpens your intuition so that you have much more understanding of people and less judgment of people. Vibration, like Abraham Hicks teaches, kindness aligns with abundance frequency. You attract what you emit. Law of assumption, Neville Goddard. Assume kindness is strength. and the world reflects that belief back to you. The rules. Kindness does not equal people-pleasing. Saying no is kindness to you. And there will be times that you have to say no as a person who is kind. But it just means you're saying no to somebody else because you're saying yes for yourself. Saying no creates the right boundaries for yourself and protects your energy. You have a right to choose what you want in your life and what you don't want in your life. No is good. Detach from the outcomes. The grandfather didn't owe me anything. He was just a means for the universe to reward my kindness or just reward me for my dedication to children or whatever. I was emitting a signal of giving freely and generously, and I received that back. I got it back. I had no idea where it was going to come from. But to have a Canadian Lakehouse from that, and rent-free apartment in New York City from that, and two-family home in Brooklyn, New York, where it was very easy to rent, have my very high mortgage paid while my next-door neighbor was suffering. And we had the same house, and his mortgage was half my mortgage because he had bought 20 years before I got on the block. And he was struggling because he didn't know the rules, the strategies of being a landlord in New York City. Theta Alignment. So in theta states, you can visualize, which is a deep meditation state. It's the state that we're in before we go into a deep sleep. Right now, when we're awake, we're in the beta state. Eyes open is beta. As we close our eyes and get quieter, it's alpha. And then theta is the deep meditation state before we go into sleep, delta. So in the theta deep meditation state, visualize kindness as this golden loop, And what you give, you receive. What you give, you receive. Your action plan, if you want to use kindness for creating wealth. Start small. Hold a door open for someone. Listen in a conversation without interrupting. It shifts your energy fast. Number 2, track your kindness wins. Journal unexpected blessings. Where your attention goes, the energy flows. So when you start tracking unexpected blessings, you get more of them. Whatever you focus on grows. Even if it's a text, a discount, a referral. Number 3, upgrade self-talk. Replace I'm too nice with my kindness is a superpower. Still know how to say no. Don't be kind and give everything away. You don't want to drain yourself. You don't want to drain your energy. You want to stay in power and know when to give and when to say no. That means you're giving to yourself when you say no. So kindness isn't weak. It's wisdom. The universe loves a giver, but you set the terms. Stay open, stay kind, and watch the surprises unfold. And come on back. Let's prove the cynics wrong together. And check out this video for manifestation success. If you're having any problems manifesting, it could be your energy hygiene. I'm Carol at True Self Unmasked. Until next time, bye. Thank you.